Hey everybody, I am now live and it's late. Hope everybody is well, doing well. It's been a crazy series of days, but now we can talk about NFL playoffs. The Bucks at the Washington football team. Seattle traveling to LA to play the Rams. Well, sort of, because I'm kind of going to handle that. I think that's going to be Arizona Stadium because of the whole lockdown situation. We've got the Colts visiting the Buffalo Bills. And that is just on Saturday. Okay. So scroll down. All right. 6 games, 2 days. These are three of the 6 matchups. Okay. 6 games, 2 days, one action-packed weekend. And so, and in more news, the Cowboys fired defensive coordinator Mike Nolan. Interesting. His dad, Dick Nolan, was a disciple of Tom Landry and later the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Wildcard weekend preview. We have Bucks Washington there. And as we scroll down, we've got, that's a long one. And then we have, right through there. Well, that's only one. That's interesting. They only have Bucks Washington. So they do that, okay? So let's just do this another way since their own web game is not exactly on point. Let's go to playoffs there and see officially who's in and who we're dealing with, okay? So there we go. You can see that? Pretty neat, huh? All roads point to Tampa, sort of, because of COVID concerns, but nonetheless, all roads point to Tampa. So the way they're going to do this, we have Saturday, 1:05 p.m. Saturday, the Indianapolis Colts traveling to Buffalo. That's not virtual. To be there to play the Buffalo Bills. Now, how do I read this? I read this as such. The Buffalo Bills are a very fast team, very great defense, but they've proven they have that X factor. And the X factor is their desire and ability to call trick plays and exotic use of scheme to suit whatever objective they see. And that, I believe, is why they are the 13-3 team versus 11-5. They have the base level talent to be 11-5, but the whole factor regarding their ability and desire to design, practice, and then call exotic plays and trick plays makes them the favorite. Now, what could tip the scales here? Nothing less than the Colts doing something dastardly and underhanded in a legal way themselves. Also, just playing more solid football than Buffalo and relying on their running game. If the Colts elect to run outside on the Bills because they're not a read option team, I think it's going to be a long day for Buffalo and a victory for Indianapolis. If Indianapolis can succeed in causing the Bills defense to go one way versus their running backs going the other, it's going to be a long day. And then they mix in the pass, it'll be an even longer day. Now, if Buffalo uses no huddle and exploits its team speed to frustrate the Colts defense, the Buffalo Bills will blow out the Indianapolis Colts. This is one thing to have the desire to win. It's one thing to break a playoff drought. But now that you're in the office, as they say, you have to prove you have what it takes to stay. That's what this game is all about, okay? And And hold on a second. Sorry. So anyway, point I'm making is there's not a lot that's going to surprise either team. And that's why such schemes will make the difference. So that's that game. Okay, so that's Super Wild Card Weekend game preview. Then the Rams are going to the Seahawks. Different story. The way they had the photographs, the Seahawks were going to the Rams. I thought, well, that might be right in terms of procedure, but it's not right in terms of COVID-19 restrictions in California, which prohibit playing at Rams Stadium. They would go to Arizona, but the Rams visit the Seahawks. The Rams are 10-6. The Seahawks are 12-4. So guess what? Advantage Seahawks. It's hard for me to see a Rams team that had some problems down the stretch getting in and overwhelming the Seattle. The Seahawks have MVP quarterback Russell Wilson, but more important, they have an offense that makes him MVP, an offense of movement, an offense of that was Kansas City essentially before Kansas City. And their defense is playing better ball. They're getting the ball faster. In short, the Seahawks have been less impacted by COVID than other organizations. So with the Rams. So I think we're getting to see the Seahawks in their purest form. It's hard for me to imagine a blowout on either side. This is going to be a close game. I believe the Seahawks will prevail. If the Rams prevail, it will be because their defense against the run was much better, that they installed schemes that are more appropriate to stop Seattle. That will be the difference if they do that. So we've got 8:15 at night, the Saturday night game. Here we go. And here is, to help us talk about these things, the great Mr. Laspinoso. How you doing? Vinny, how are you?
Doing good as always, Zennie. How have you been
see if we
today?
can get him to. I thought we could get him to talk. Vinny, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
There's the voice.
I'm echoing here a little bit.
Oh, sorry about that. It's been a weird week.
Fine.
This is apropos. Okay, let's get your ideas about how these things you think are going to. Let's work backward because I went through the first two. Let's talk Buccaneers and the Washington football team. Who do you see as winning?
I think Tampa's going to win this game. I don't think it's going to be as convincing as people think, because keep in mind, Washington does have a really solid, stacked defense. And as we remember, Ron Rivera has beaten Bruce Arians in the playoffs twice. And one time was when a Ron Rivera-led team, if you remember the 2014 Carolina Panthers, who were 7-8-1, who managed to defeat the 11-5 Arizona Cardinals. Now, keep in mind, that Cardinals team was also led by Ryan Lindley, who was their third-string quarterback after both Carson Palmer and Drew Stanton were out for the year. And their offense was also sputtering a lot. But in this case, you're in a Buccaneers offense that has been doing pretty hot lately. Granted, you're not going to have Mike Evans. You might not have Mike Evans here to help you out, but even then, you still have Chris Godwin. You still have Antonio Brown. You still have Rob Gronkowski. You still have your offensive line, which has gotten better. Though my main concern with them is their defense. However, I don't think Washington's offense is as good to really stop them. I think what's going to be the main difference factor is the Buccaneers offense versus Washington's defense. That's going to be the main matchup that I'm going to want to see. However, I remember that Week 17 game against the Eagles, and let's be honest. If Jalen Hurts wasn't pulled out of the game in the middle of the game, I think the Eagles would have won that game, and we would have seen the Giants against the Bucks. And mainly because of that, and because the Buccaneers have been rolling as of late, I got to go with the Buccaneers here to defeat Washington. I mean, as much as I would love to see Washington have a nice upset, especially with Alex Smith, I love his story. I just got to be realistic here. I think Tampa's going to win by 10 points.
Every time I thought the Buccaneers are going to go in a situation and come out the loser this year, they didn't. And while I'm not ready to anoint them the Super Bowl champions out of the NFC, I think Seattle more closely fills that bill. They have remade themselves in the image of what Tom Brady, I think, wanted as an offensive organization in particular. The defense side, they've done very well, especially during the pandemic. But
the front seven is great for the Buccaneers. Really, their secondary, that's really always been the struggle for them the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, and so I think that they are a dark horse team to beat, very dangerous. But with this game, the reason why I have a hard time seeing them come out on top on every single scenario is because of the Washington defensive line and my belief that there is a possibility that they'll mix in blitzes.
I can see that.
If they mix in blitzes, go man for man, and take some chances with respect to pushing the pocket up the middle, they would render the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense inert very quickly and give their offense a fighting chance to win. Now, that brings up the Buccaneers defense. The question is what kind of offense we're going to get with the Washington football team. And the reason why I say that is because they've had so many different types of they have had so many different quarterbacks. They had Dwight Haskins, who has a particular style and therefore a particular scheme approach. You've had Alex Smith, and you've had others because of injury or performance or whatever. And now you're finally getting an offense that is, I think, more set in place to be effective at the right time. But because of that, there's not as much tape on that offense or video as on that offense as you would like to have to form a game plan based around what they might do or not statistically. And so I think that factor makes the Buccaneers defense job that much harder. Having said all that, the Buccaneers have a championship defense. So the only hope that Washington has of rendering this not a blowout is for their defense to blitz and mix their blitzes in with their incredible front four.
Absolutely.
I think this is going to be, and I've seen it before. I think we've seen it before where, and my thought was the 2000 Ravens and then 1985 Bears. The Bears defense was so great. They didn't really need an effective offense. And for all of their talk about Willie Gault and Walter Payton, the Bears did not have an offense that scared anyone. It was effective, but it didn't. But they had a defense that scared everybody. No one wanted to get on the field and get hit by Mike Singletary, number 50.
Why would you?
Right. And he was the unquestioned quarterback of the defense. He was Buddy Ryan's id in defensive form, and he played like it. But then he had a great supporting cast. He had Wilbur Marshall. He had
Dan Hampton.
He had Dan Hampton. He had Richard Dent. He had Dave Dewars, the late rest in peace David Duerson, and Gary Finsick, and a lot of
great players on that defense.
Right. I had the pleasure of meeting late David Duerson, by the way, at Mike Ditka's restaurant. If you ever go to Chicago, go to Mike Ditka's when it's safe to go.
But also, don't forget that Bears team. Even though you could say their offense did have some quality. Of course, you had Walter Payton, but you also had a quality front offensive line with Hall of Famer Jimbo Covert, and also a guy that many people would like to see as well, and Jay Hilgenberg.
Yeah.
And McMahon was okay, but it was really the running game that's they built in the trenches, they established the run, and what do you get? A legendary team.
Yeah,
With
but also,
Washington, though, I mean, it's a bit of a stretch to say that, Washington is sort of like the 1985 Chicago Bears because as much as I would love that to be the case. I mean, even though they are 7-9, when all their cylinders are clicking, this is not a team that you should look at the record and just say, "Oh, they're 7-9. We can walk the floor through." That being said, though, the Buccaneers are definitely a much more well-rounded team. They're definitely a team that can absolutely torch you. Like, even though the last few weeks, even though it's against somewhat inferior teams like the Lions or the Falcons, at the same time, it's not exactly like Washington is football team, whatever you want to call them, or they're going to be the biggest world beaters. So, as much as I would like to see them, I do think we're going to have. I think the Bucs will win, but I think at least by a touchdown. I would not be shocked if it's more. But if anything, you have the W as your logo, and maybe W means win in this case. Who knows what happens?
Yeah. So moving onward from that one, I'm working backward with you now. I already gave my thoughts about this game. I said the Seahawks are going to win. What do you think?
Oh, there's no question the Seahawks can win. In fact, John Wolford is expected to probably start for the Rams. Don't forget, Goff's thumb is still broken, and it's on his throwing hand. How would you expect to see Jared Goff to even play when his right thumb is broken? Let's get that out of the way. Second of all, we can just look at a couple weeks ago when the Rams, all they had to do to win the division was to win against the Seahawks.
Yep.
And they would have it basically clinched, and they also went against the Cardinals. But they did not. They did play close against them, but then Seattle just ran away with it at the very, very end. Granted, I don't think the Seahawks are a team that I would see potentially making the Super Bowl. I know that there's a potential thought of me that they could, but I think as much as I do like their offense, their defense in the early kind of was a little bit suspect at the beginning, but I don't know. I feel like a team like the Rams, I just can't see the Rams beating the Seahawks. I know that there might be a couple that might say, "Oh, the Rams can." I mean, if the Rams can really pressure the offensive line of the Seahawks and make Russell Wilson uncomfortable, then I could really see it. However, seeing the Rams kind of it looked like the Rams might have, win the division very comfortably, but then at the very end of the season, they kind of petered off and just wanted to cut one shot against the Cardinals to win themselves a playoff berth. And they're happy to be here. I mean, if there was a 7 seed last year, they would definitely make the playoffs, but the Rams, I think, are going to fall to the Seahawks. And then the Seahawks are going to win by, give it 10 points at least, 7-10 points around there.
What say you about the Colts and the Buffalo Bills?
The Colts may be the 7th seed, but keep in mind, they're 11-5. So just because they may be a 7 seed, look at the wins and look at who they've played against. Now you might be saying, okay, they lost. They're the only team that lost the Jacksonville Jaguars. But keep in mind, this is the same Jacksonville Jaguars team that lost every single game the rest of the season, just like the 2001 Carolina Panthers. When you look at the Colts, Philip Rivers still has a lot left in the tank. I know there might be some that say that he may retire. I definitely do not see that. And they have lost some games. All the teams that they lost to are, in fact, playoff teams other than the Jaguars. They lost to the Browns in Cleveland. They lost to the Ravens. That was by 2 touchdowns. They lost to the Titans, but a couple weeks before they did beat those same Titans team. And as for the Steelers, even though they lost, they still had a 17-point lead on them, and it looked like they were going to win that game. So even though the Colts may be and they find themselves in the 7th spot, this is definitely a team that can see beating the Bills.
Yep.
I mean, even though I do think the Bills are a team that will go to the AFC title game, do not count out the Colts. The Colts are a dangerous team. The Colts defense is really, really good. The Colts offensive line is really, really good. The Colts, the team I see as a very, very well-balanced oil machine. You should not count out the Indianapolis Colts, especially considering they have Frank Reich as your head coach, who knows the Bills better than anyone other than the Bills themselves.
Great point.
But at the same time, you got to look at the Buffalo Bills themselves. The Buffalo Bills, ever since you had the Hail Murray pass, the Bills have been the hottest team in the NFL. They've, in fact, to finish out the season, when the Dolphins, all they had to do was win and they get in, they absolutely blew the brakes off of the Dolphins, and the Bills scored the most amount of points than they ever did since 1966. So I would definitely not count the Bills. Josh Allen played an MVP level. He definitely had his breakout season. And I don't know, this is a very tough game. Like, I know that a lot of people are picking the Bills, but I don't know. Like, the Colts are a good team too. I mean, I'm picking the Bills, but 3 points. I see the Bills winning by a field goal.
Yeah. That's a toss-up game. It's hard. So now we move to Sunday, and we have another great set starting with 1:05 p.m. our time Eastern. The Ravens going to the Titans.
This is the game I'm most looking forward to easily.
I am too. So what do you think? Because I'll tell you what I think. The Ravens have a powerful defense. They're playing crisp football. The Titans have Derrick Henry, and that's about it. I don't see the Titans playing, even though they're in the playoffs. I don't see them as having gone into the playoffs for the past 4 games playing consistently good football. So the question is, what's their game plan going to be like against the Ravens defense? I'm not concerned about the Ravens offense, but no. I'm concerned about the Ravens defense ability to stop the Titans running game. And you want to see a better scheme fit there. But I think this game is, especially since the Ravens have been really hot, the Ravens to lose. What do you think?
The Ravens have won 5 after going 1-5 after their bye week, after they were destroyed by COVID but barely lost to the Steelers. The Ravens went on an absolute tear, winning 5 straight games, including that classic game on Monday Night Football against the Browns. I mean, that was definitely the best game of the year. There's no objection. That was easily the best game of the year. When I look at the Ravens, they're a team that has definitely gotten hot recently, and they are a team that many people thought would miss the playoffs, and here they are, 5 seed, and I'm very happy to see them in this position. The Titans, on the other hand, I feel a little bit different about, because it's a team that was undefeated to start the season, and many people, I didn't pick them to win in the division again, but they are a team that, made it to the AFC Championship game last year. They had a lot of high expectations. They finally did not go 9-7 to finish the season. They went 11-5 this time, which I'm very happy about. But after they lost to the Steelers, they've been kind of a little bit up and down. At home, for whatever reason, they have lost quite a number of games at home. They lost to the Steelers, they lost to the Colts, they lost to the Browns. The only one that they beat at home was the Lions, and the Lions went 5-11. And the Lions are bad. But at the same time, keep this in mind too. They were also very, very close to falling as the 7th seed again after they almost lost to the Texans, a team that they usually torch.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they still made it here. They still won their division. They're still hosting the playoff game against a team that they had an upset victory again last year in the playoffs. And when you see someone like Derrick Henry, to me, easily, he's the best back in football. Without question, Derrick Henry is the best running back in football. Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any question about that. He should win Offensive Player of the Year. If anything, my personal opinion, I think he should be in the top 3 of MVP consideration. No doubt. He is just that good. And he has the Ravens have called him their daddy the last couple of games. That's as bluntly as I could say it. Like, whether it be the playoffs or the game this season where they face against each other, when the game mattered most in overtime, who had the game-winning touchdown, blitzing and running all the way through the Baltimore Ravens defense? It was Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
And, at the same time, the Titans defense, they have been kind of slumping a little bit. I mean, the fact that you almost lost the Texans. But at the same time, that also was a divisional game. But you've also known the Ravens too. That's why this game is so interesting to me, because this one is very tough.
I'm gonna pick the Ravens.
Honestly, to tell you the truth, I was very close to picking the Titans, but thinking about it more and more, I feel like the Ravens are going to want their revenge here. So give me Baltimore.
I think that they're going to have an answer on defense, and I think their offense is better. Okay, so moving along, this is the game that I think contains the upset special. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the Chicago Bears to upset the New Orleans Saints.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that
just nothing more. Well, feeling in prognostication about football for me does have a relationship with intellect. And first of all, the Saints have not played their greatest football. And in fact, all year long, they haven't, I contend, due to COVID concerns, but also they've not won of late when Taysom Hill was at quarterback. And I understand Drew Brees is coming in, but what if Drew gets injured again? Have they adequately trained Jameis? They haven't given him any snaps at the ball on television to be able to say, hey, look, he's had enough war duty. Now, he could come in as talented as he is, as much as he knows the offense, and shock everybody except me with his performance, because I wouldn't be surprised. But the Saints would not do that. The Bears, with that offense that was designed by Matt Nagy, are the perfect trap team against the Saints. The Bears have a weak record, but they have this offense which has not unleashed its full complement of unusual approaches. And the wild card is a defense that has played very well of late, and it's almost a question of how healthy they will be going into the game, which I'll get to in a second. So I think that I'm going to hold that to this, knowing, hey, the conventional wisdom could prevail, but I believe the Bears will beat the Saints.
That is like the upset of the year. Now, at the same time, when the Bears, now, many Bears fans were actually upset the Bears made the playoffs, mainly because they lost their game against the Packers. But because the Cardinals lost to the Rams, the Bears were elevated to the 7th seed. Now,
they're upset because they want to see Matt Nagy fired, and so he goes to the playoffs. If the Bears go to the playoffs, which has happened, guess what? The argument to fire him is that
moot.
Much less.
It's moot, and
I don't know if it's moot. It's been done before. A coach has barely gotten his team into the playoffs and still got fired. So it's not necessarily moot. All right.
Of course, it's not moot, but it's lesser. But I remember Mike Mularkey. He won against his team. The Titans won against the Chiefs. They came back and won against the Chiefs, but then got obliterated by the Patriots in the next round, and they fired him as the season. Then now we have Mike Vrabel, and the rest is history. Well, you look at the Bears. It's because they wanted Matt Nagy fired. They wanted Ryan Pace fired. They wanted Mitch Trubisky gone.
Fans, by the way, yeah.
What?
We're talking about the Bears fans.
Oh, the Bears fans. Like, usually people like to say that Eagles fans, the Bears fans. My God, I've never really seen a fan base so just disgusted and angry about some have got said really disgusting things. It's so disgusting that I'm not even going to mention what they said, just in general. But now, the Bears, how did the Bears get here? It's sort of like the reverse of what you'd really see in a normal team that you would expect to see get very big in the playoffs. Because the Bears are a team that started off the season in their first six games, 5-1. And you've had wins against the Buccaneers, really shocking win. You lost to the Colts. However, you had some nice victories against teams. But then you went on that big 6-game losing streak, and many people were this team is done. But then something happened. After Nick Foles went down and Mitch Trubisky got back, his play got a little bit better, and the team started to get a little bit better, and they obliterated the Texans. They beat the Vikings, a team that many people thought had a much likelier chance to make the playoffs. Then they bust off the brakes off the Jaguars in Week 16, and even though they lost to the Packers, they're in the playoffs because of how well they did. And if this is the rules, some people may not like it, but guess what? These are the rules. There is a 7 seed. If you were the 7th best team in your conference, you make it. The Bears were the 7th best team. Like it or not, the NFC is a little bit weak this year because wins and losses. Here they are. They don't have a losing record.
You know that once you make the playoffs, you can pull people back off injured reserve that were on there during the year.
Yeah.
You can remake your team for a Super Bowl run. So let's move on. But you have.
I need to say my prediction.
Yeah.
Even though I think the Bears, and keep in mind, this Bears team they play against the Saints early in the season. They lost, but they lost in overtime in Soldier Field. So this is not a team that I would completely take lightly against. But because it is in New Orleans, and because the Saints are just a better team in general, and because the Bears kind of lost again, and even though I think the Saints are going to win, I think they're going to win by 1 touchdown, 7 points.
All right, cool. Moving along, we've got the Browns visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm just going to put this to rest right now. I think the Steelers are going to clobber the Browns. All this stuff about Browns making the playoffs, all this yada, yada, yada. The Steelers have an extra incentive to scheme properly, prepare well, and beat the Cleveland Browns, particularly with their defense, at home. And the Browns have incentive to play well, but I believe that the way their losses turned out with respect to how they lost to the Ravens, and I still think they're growing. They're definitely a contender now, but I don't see them with the edge that they need schematically and the emotion to walk in and beat the organization that looked like it was going to run the table, okay? And before faltering down the stretch for injury concerns. So I would not be surprised if the Steelers won very big. There you go.
I completely agree with you. This actually reminds me a lot of the 2012 Minnesota Vikings. Now, why do I mention the 2012 Minnesota Vikings? Well, it's because they are a team that in order to make the playoffs, they had to defeat their arch rival in the final week of the season, their arch rival who already clinched the division. And if they win, they play against them in the first round of the playoffs. And what do you know? Christian Ponder was hurt, and you had Joe Webb start, and they lost by 2 touchdowns. In this case, you have the Browns who won against the Steelers at home with a Steelers team that wasn't trying as hard because they had Mason Rudolph starting. They barely won the last second. And the Browns, what's their issue? You see their entire coaching staff has COVID concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I know it's bold. I know it's big. Cleveland, I'm happy to see you here after not seeing you there since I was like 3 years old in 2012. But I'm sorry, Steelers by 14.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same exact way as the Packers and the Vikings from 2012.
So let's take all the books. Let's look at the injury report before we get out of here. At 1:42 in the morning, Super Bowl wild card. Excuse me, Super wild card weekend injury.
Super wild card.
Right. Colts at Bills. We have the Colts did not practice Tuesday or Wednesday. Keep that in mind. And so the practice reports for those days are estimations. Tackle will, and this is why you get a lot of weird outcomes in terms of one-loss records. This is also why you get these wild swings in games where a team will be up 17-0 and then lose 24-17 or some wildly outlandish score indicating that wasn't the first half of that game. Injuries. And so you had a number of people. DeForest Buckner, former Niner, Will Holden, a tackle. Phil Rivers had a toe issue Wednesday, Thursday, okay? I mean, you have a number of key players that had a problem. Bills didn't practice Tuesday. That gives the Bills an edge, all right? So that gives the Bills an edge. So consider that. Then there's the Rams at the Seahawks. The Rams didn't practice Tuesday. They have, you mentioned Goff, big problem there. Big problem there.
Big problem. Wolford's going to probably start.
But if you take a look at the range of injury reports, guess what? they focus for the most part on the offense. All right, note that. Note that. But there's a lot of and the Seahawks have no game whatsoever. Excuse me, no day whatsoever where they did not hold a practice. That gives them a major advantage. Major. The Buccaneers at the Washington football team. The Buccaneers did not practice Tuesday. All right. Ledbetter out. Sean McCoy illness. Practice report shows basically kind of did not participate in practice reports. And we mentioned Mike Evans here, but you got full participation in practice by Juan Jones, LaShawn McCoy, and cornerback Carlton Davis as well. The Washington football team did not practice Tuesday either. And however, if you take a look at these injury lists, it doesn't look overall like it's containing anything that could kill your thinking that they could upset the Buccaneers in this instance. The Ravens at the Titans, the Ravens have no game where they did not hold a practice. None. They have questionables, but they look healthy. This is basically a Nixon Dings report. The Titans didn't practice on Wednesday. Wow. They have no players listed for their status report. They have a handful of players that did not practice on Wednesday, Thursday, and then A.J. Brown has a problem with his knee and hand on Friday. Interesting. And then limited participation in practice for others and then full participation. So it looks like the Ravens are going into this pretty much at full strength and the Titans are nicked up. The Bears didn't practice on Wednesday. Cornerback Buster Screen is out. Not a big problem here. But overall, once again, we have a sort of Nixon Dings report, but keep in mind they didn't practice a full day. The Saints have no day where they did not practice. Nick Easton and Trey Hendrickson are out, guard and defensive end, respectively. Reports on both of them. So basically, the Saints are going into this game healthy. Taysom Hill had a concussion. He participated in practice, however. So basically, this is looking like the Saints game to win, although I'm sticking with my upset. Browns at Steelers. The Browns are in bad shape here because they did not practice Wednesday or Thursday. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Conklin, key, illness. Myles Garrett, shoulder. This looks bad for the Browns.
Very bad.
Yeah. So this looks bad. And so that's how it rounds out, folks, for the injury reports, So we're going to see what happens starting. Hey, Francisco, and hey, Mario, how y'all doing?
Hey, guys.
We're gonna find out really quick because the game's starting in less than 12 hours. Vinny, you got closing thoughts so we can go to bed? Not you.
My personal thoughts are that it's super wild card weekend, and afterwards it'll just be known as wild card weekend again because we'll be so used to it. But I should mention this is pretty interesting. Side note, this is based on television contracts. I don't know your personal opinion on this. And it sounds a little weird. What do you personally think about the contract they have with Nickelodeon for one of their games for some reason? I know it's a strange question, but seeing that Nickelodeon is doing one of the games along with CBS is definitely a bit of a different wrinkle to it.
Well, it tells me that there's not enough money to engineer a game being shown. What it tells me is rather sinister, unfortunately. And I mean sinister in a way that implies wrongdoing.
Yeah.
It tells me that there's not enough money that the NFL can muster to shift the game to get it on regular television.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Coupled with the fact that they didn't get the bailout money that they were promised. So it's not a good situation to have when you have that. I had to admit, I didn't look at the agreement in detail. I thought it was, in my mind, brushed it off as sort of a marketing thing. But it didn't occur to me that that was going to be like what Amazon was, where it was a game that you can only watch on Amazon.
Yeah, it's kind of weird seeing like an NFC and an NFC play. I mean, forget regular season, an NFC playoff game on CBS as well as simulcasted on CBS's sister network Nickelodeon. Like, I'm wondering, are they have SpongeBob and Dora the Explorer as doing the color?
It's a matter of I don't know what the real answer is, because when I heard you say that at first, my thought was, it's showing it only on Nickelodeon. It doesn't make any sense. And then I thought, okay, let's go with that, assuming that he's correct. That means that there's a rights fee. There's a problem with money, but that means there's not. However, I do believe that it may be that Nickelodeon had enough money and infrastructure to put this on live versus Amazon, because it begs the question, why not go back to Amazon, right?
I think it's also on Amazon. I could be wrong. Like, for some reason, like, it's when I saw it, I saw CBS, I saw Nickelodeon, and I saw Amazon. And the reason why I'm mentioning that, because it just feels kind of weird, like seeing Nickelodeon Kids Channel. Like, what's next? Is Disney Channel going to do something? Is Cartoon Network going to get involved? If AT&T has a one?
It's not weird when it comes down to money.
That's true, but it's just weird for me. It just has the outside looking in.
Well, yeah, it's not, if it comes down to money, it looks less weird. And so if we take a look at the announcement on the NFL, the NFL's website for media, which announces that the NFL has teamed up with Nickelodeon here. Okay. And it says that Viacom, CBS Consumer Products, Nickelodeon, and Junk Food Clothing are teaming up for the NFL and SpongeBob SquarePants Junk Food Collection. And so they said that it will be in support of the special slime-filled presentation of the NFL Wild Card game on Nickelodeon Sunday. And this has all the markings of a sponsorship experimentation done because at the end of the day, Nickelodeon has enough money to make it happen.
It also reminded me of how, like, for Madden, they have all the SpongeBob stuff, and like seeing like SpongeBob and Madden. Like, I thought there was like a joke or something like that, but it's in fact a real thing.
Look at it from a demographic perspective, it's right up the NFL's wheelhouse. But also,
absolutely,
it's a matter of products and money. This reads, and I'll do some more digging to find out about it, but this reads like an experiment. But I'll tell you what,
like experiment.
I can't experiment with this need for sleep in the time of COVID. So I'm going to bed.
Yeah, I know I'm just mentioning that. That's really just my final thoughts, because it is definitely a new wrinkle. And obviously for money purposes, this makes a lot of sense. I think for many people, they were just a little bit confused by it. But if it does well, for all we know, we might see more of stuff like this. For all we know, maybe they could simulcast the game on Disney Channel potentially and have, I don't know, Mickey Mouse do some stuff.
I think this is a COVID-19 associated partnership.
I think so too.
It's, but we'll see. All right. Good night, everybody. Subscribe
to
bookmark OaklandNewsNow.com, and that ends the broadcast